Hello, NAFLT leaders. Welcome back to our Matriculate Leadership Training and Orientation process. I'm Juliana. I use she, hers pronouns, and today we're going to be walking through the NAFLT role in more detail with our NAFLT Roadmap session. So I'm going to turn my video off and we can get a rolling. So, goals for the session today. First, we're going to develop a deeper understanding of recruitment goals and recruitment timeline. Then, hopefully, we'll understand the full scope of the NAFLT role and its responsibilities over the course of the one-year term. We'll then identify opportunities for growth, skill development, professional development as an NAFLT member and matriculate leader. And then we'll explore problem-solving strategies, including the different resources, structures, staff support that is available to each of you as you navigate this process. Now, our agenda. First, we're going to talk about the role and responsibilities in depth. Then we'll discuss the advising fellow recruitment timeline and position roadmap. Then we'll talk about NAFLT leadership support, professional development. And lastly, we'll look at some specific examples of NAFLT responsibilities and action from prior leaders and go over some next steps. So it's a pretty dense agenda, as you can see. So I encourage you to grab a snack, grab a water, grab whatever you need to stay present and engaged in the session. And I thank you in advance for your participation. So first, let's define the NAFLT role and responsibilities. Throughout the AF leadership selection process, all of you demonstrated passion and capability in the following three areas: leadership skills, organizational skills, and interpersonal skills. Throughout your time as a member of the NAFLT, you'll lean on each of those competency areas to carry out our values-driven approach to recruitment, our values-driven approach to HAF and AFLT management, and in order to support your assigned campuses in building a cohort community of engaged AFs. Additionally, I can't really talk about your role and responsibilities without bringing up the responsibility as a staff member and of our staff to work collaboratively with each of you on your leadership skills throughout your journey and time as an NAFLT member. So during meetings with staff, during our NAFLT group meetings, during our communications throughout the year, we will work together to make sure you're supported to continue growing your leadership skills and qualities. And these skills will continue to be a work in progress. So now we're going to take a deeper look into each of these skills areas. So, leadership skills. These are essential to all leadership roles at Matriculate. And during your selection and moving forward, we're going to categorize leadership skills as leadership, management, communication, and persistence. As a member of the NAFLT, these management and leadership skills are hugely important. You'll be managing communication between your assigned campus and Matriculate recruitment staff, and you'll be leading student peers to be successful in building a team with each other, communicating with prospective advising fellows, and ultimately in a successful advising fellow recruitment and cohort building process. So you all have prior experience using leadership skills in a Matriculate context. So going forward, we'll be working together to see how these same competencies translate to the responsibilities of the NAFLT role. I think it's also worth mentioning that these leadership skills for AFLT are the same ones we use to work with our HAFs and our AFLT. So when you're working with your assigned campuses, in addition to reflecting on the ways in which you'll be using these skills, it's also important to think about the way you might track skill progress with your HAFs and AFLT. So for example, one of your HAFs might really struggle with management. So that would be a really good thing for you to identify and for you to work with them on collaboratively. Also something to bring in Matriculate staff on in order to support that HAF in order to be successful in their goals. Now, I'm not going to go through these leadership skills in detail for each one because I think that one, as former Matriculate leaders, hopefully this looks familiar to you. And two, it's going to be part of your kind of work to sit with these skills and identify what feels comfortable for you at this point and what you want to grow on going forward in your NAFLT role. So I'll kind of leave it there and we'll move on to our next set of skills, organizational skills. Now, as an NAFLT member, these skills of operations, prioritization, and time management are really key. I think they'll be particularly essential in managing your assigned campus's progress towards their recruitment targets. So you'll be managing your team and your HAFs particularly in order to design specific aspects of recruitment and in order to ensure that they're moving forward on their recruitment plans and that they feel successful and supported in their roles. So you'll be doing a lot of more bigger picture management of what your HAFs and AFLT are working on. You'll be, helping them to prioritize what they should be focusing on each week. And I also really want to highlight time management. As an NAFLT member, there's a lot of work that we can do to support our campuses, but this position is 8 to 10 hours a week. And we really want to make sure that you are sticking to that throughout your time and not going above and beyond that time. So part of that is effective time management and priority setting on your end, but part of that is also up to me and up to Patrick to connect with each of you, ensure that your workload feels manageable and ensure that you understand, those boundaries, that you're not responsible for, executing all of recruitment for your campuses. That's absolutely not what the goal is. So again, won't go through these in immense detail, but I encourage you to refer back to them and think about what you might like to focus on, what's a growth area for you. And lastly, we have interpersonal skills. These are a crucial aspect of any successful leadership team and any successful relationship with a head advising fellow. Strong relationships, communication between leadership team members, I believe, are the baseline from which all the smaller recruitment tasks, action items, and plans will flow. So strong relationships and collaboration are key to success, and they're something we really value at Matriculate. So you'll be working to build these skills with your assigned HAFs and also within the NAFLT team as a whole. I really think that, without coherent relationship building and strong relationship building with your HAFs, we can't really expect to move forward on our recruitment tasks and recruitment responsibilities. And in addition, there will be a lot of collaboration among the NAFLT group. It's really wonderful to have this smaller group of 7, so we can spend a lot of time, connecting with each other, preparing, sharing best practices, troubleshooting challenges, things of that nature. Now we're going to talk about NAFLT responsibilities. So hopefully you've already gotten a chance to look at the NAFLT Roadmap, which outlines each month of the NAFLT role, taking a deep dive into the skills and tasks you'll have to complete throughout your time as a MAT leader. And in the NAFLT Roadmap, you'll see these 3 responsibilities show up throughout the document. So before we look at that roadmap in greater detail, which we'll do later in the session, we want to take a moment to look at how these responsibilities are defined as a member of the NAFLT. So we're focusing a bit more on the fall responsibilities as a recruitment lead, as that's the period of the NAFLT role we're moving into now. So our first responsibility here, we have management. Management is in many ways the foundation of the NAFLT role. You'll be managing your HAFs and AFLT to successfully execute advising fellow recruitment. So you'll do this through leading weekly one-on-ones with your HAFs, through tracking your team's progress towards recruitment targets using Airtable and other management tools, and through providing coaching and feedback. And this feedback will be on everything from how to run a successful team meeting with their AFLT to how they can improve the action items of their last recruitment email, to how you can coach them through the process of developing values. Next is planning. Planning is also really important, namely in providing feedback for your team's recruitment plans for the week and the month, in supporting your team to create and implement their fellowship vision and values, and in terms of managing your team's progress against upcoming AF recruitment deadlines. So making sure that they're aware and planning for the application deadline, the interview deadline, all of those things. And then once you move past this recruitment lead period, you'll also be planning your program design project, which requires a lot of self-management and a lot of independent planning and deadline setting. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have community development. So I already spoke about this, but building a trusting relationship with your HAFs and with your AFLT that you'll be working with them less directly is incredibly important. You'll also be supporting your HAFs in developing clear expectations for their leadership team. And then lastly, we'll be building community within the smaller NAFLT group through our weekly meetings. So the NAFLT program term can be divided into 3 distinct sections. The first is your work as a recruitment lead. The second is your work supporting AF training. And the third is program design. So much of this training will focus on the recruitment lead aspects, as these are the first responsibilities you'll take over in the fall. It's also a pretty distinct and complex body of work. So this is where we're living now. So you'll be executing recruitment lead responsibilities, supporting your head advising fellows to execute AF recruitment. We'd also be attending weekly team meetings with NAFLT, and you'll really be tracking your assigned teams really closely against their recruitment goals and targets. Then after we move through this period, you'll work with your HAFs who transition into that cohort management and community building process with their newly accepted AFs in this training and certification time. You'll also participate in a transition plan to support your head advising fellows to stop working with you and start working with their assigned campus lead, sharing some information with your campus lead about what this HAF struggled with, what this HAF is really passionate about, just to ensure that their management is tailored to what you've learned through working with those HAFs over all the months of the fall. And then we'll also work together on collecting some best practices and feedback from the AF recruitment cycle. So making sure all of the work that you've all done throughout the fall isn't lost and is instead incorporated in our program for the subsequent year of leaders. Then lastly, the program design portion. So the NAFLT spring role is focused a lot less on recruitment and the advising fellow recruitment and training cycle, and a lot more about designing projects that will improve Matriculate's programming for years to come. So you'll work with NAFLT to provide feedback on their projects, and then you'll do a lot of independent work in order to design and implement a recruitment project. A program design project does not have to be about recruitment, but can be. And then you'll actually have an opportunity to present your project to Matriculate staff members. So it's important to recognize that those responsibilities I went over, they're not existing in a vacuum, right? Instead, they're existing in relationship with the overall efforts of your assigned leadership teams. So let's take a look at how your responsibilities overlap with and differ from those of HAFs and AFLT. I'm not going to go through this in immense detail because, again, everybody here has experience as either an AFLT member or an HAF or both. So hopefully these objectives and roles look pretty familiar to you. But the point that I really want to bring home here is that as a manager, especially of AFLT and HAFs, it's really important to understand the breakdown of the different responsibilities of each position, where your responsibilities end and where theirs begin. I think that's super crucial to modeling good management. And to just, really having your finger on the pulse of what students are doing on your leadership team and ensuring any asks that you're making of them are appropriate given the responsibilities and limitations of their roles. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but just important to see, how your responsibilities overlap with the other leadership roles. So as a manager of HAFs and AFLT, it will be very important for you to understand how recruitment responsibilities are delegated among the members of your assigned campus's leadership team and how they'll work on executing the responsibilities of advising fellow recruitment on a daily, weekly, hourly basis. Kidding there. AFLT will each be responsible for managing a recruitment specialty. So this is a specific element of the recruitment process. And HAFs will be responsible for managing their entire team to move forward on each of those assigned specialties. And then you'll be working with that HAF to support their management. So it's really a beautiful management chain from the AFLT to the HAF to you. So in order to do this successfully, we just want to give you a short overview of what these recruitment specialties are, because this is something that the AFLT and HAFs will be working on in the coming weeks, identifying which members of their team are going to take on which specialty and how they're going to delegate recruitment responsibilities within their leadership. So here we have the recruitment specialties document that the other leaders will be using to assign specialties among the team. Now, it's important to acknowledge that these exact roles may not show up on your assigned campuses because we allow teams to have a bit of innovation space to tailor these roles to the needs of their unique campus and also the skills and interests of their team. But we want to share with you these roles that we recommend that most campuses will be using and that you'll be supporting your AFLT and HAFs to execute and manage. So we have the social media manager who's responsible for creating and managing social media content and recruitment efforts. Then we have the email campaign manager who's responsible for managing the team's mass outreach via email, text, and phone call to prospective AFs. We have the personal outreach manager who's responsible for managing individual student outreach via email, text, phone call, and in-person conversations. And then we have the events and logistics manager who will be planning and executing recruitment events throughout the AF application cycle. So things like info sessions, activities fair, social gatherings, and tabling and canvassing. I want to kind of talk a bit about the intention of these recruitment specialties rather than going in depth with each one, because that's the post work for this session to really read the document. But the intention behind these specialties is to ensure that every AFLT is managing a distinct body of work in AF recruitment and has an opportunity to really, take ownership of something, make it their own, and manage their team to complete that. So if you find on your campus that your HAF is taking on managing all of the one-on-one outreach and the social media, and the email campaigns, that's not what we want, and that's kind of a sign and a red flag for you that you need to talk with your HAF about management and delegation. So these recruitment specialties really are intended to ensure that no single member of a team is burned out managing everything, and that everybody has an opportunity to manage the team and practice those skills. So I'll stop there, but please, after the session, take some time to really look at this document. Now, I keep talking about the recruitment lead role over and over again, but what does that really mean? So that means that as an NAFLT member, you're going to be assigned to our fellowships, assigned to different campuses, and you're going to be the primary point of contact for those head advising fellows throughout their AF recruitment experience in the fall, serving as a support for them. I think it's kind of helpful to frame the HAF recruitment lead relationship similarly to the HSF and AF relationship. So the same way that you're absolutely not responsible for actually filling out your HSF's college applications or deciding their college lists for them, you are not going to be executing AF recruitment tasks or leading team meetings at your assigned campuses. Instead, you'll be serving as a more big picture manager. So supporting HAFs and AFLT to build confidence and clarity in their own abilities to plan AF recruitment, to execute AF recruitment, and to really support them and serve as a sounding board for them as they are working on the process of building a strong and inclusive fellowship community. So you'll manage your HAFs and ensure that they're executing recruitment with quality, providing feedback and best practices to them, and really supporting them throughout the way, but not, getting into the nitty gritty of completing recruitment tasks. That's their role. So you'll conduct weekly one-on-ones with your head advising fellows. That's really important. You'll provide regular feedback on your team's recruitment plans and tasks. That's also really important for them to have that kind of expert perspective of a student who's already completed their recruitment, and for you to be quality checking their plans to ensure that things are actually moving forward and they're actually working towards their goals. Then we'll be having weekly NAFLT meetings, more on that later. You'll also communicate regularly with HAFs and matriculate staff throughout the process. That's another thing I really want to highlight. There's a bit of complex management at times between, the AFLT may tell something to the HAF, who may tell that to you, and you might tell that to me or to Patrick. So really clear and proactive communication is absolutely key to success as a recruitment lead, especially as we, continue to expand to new fellowships and are managing all these relationships and all of these HAFs. So, we'll be asking you to CC Patrick, to CC me on a lot of these emails so that we're also in the loop on what's moving forward on your campuses and can jump in to support you and your HAFs and AFLT throughout this. You'll be tracking progress at your assigned fellowships. So really looking from a more zoomed out level at, how many applications they have, ensuring that things are just moving forward and managing them more directly where needed if things are not moving forward. And lastly, you'll support your HAFs on their leadership skill development and management skills. And this is also something that will provide support on for those HAFs, making sure that they also have opportunities to connect with staff directly and receive professional development as a part of their experience. But you also have a lot of leadership experience to bring. That is the intention behind the creation of this role, that you all have a lot of best practices and firsthand learning that honestly I don't have. I've never been an HAF, I've never been an AFLT. So I really encourage you to reflect back on your own experience with Matriculate and think about what kind of tips and tricks you'll be hoping to share with your students once you start working with them. Great. So now we're going to take a look at the NAFLT roadmap itself. So this is a highly detailed document. So again, I'm not going to walk through the entire thing because that would take all day. But I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of how to read the document. So we have things, set up by the months here on the left panel, going through the really key moments that happen in each month of the NAFLT role. And up here, we have some kind of guiding questions, things that you should be thinking about on a more macro scale level as you move through your responsibilities and through the upcoming deadlines. So I encourage you to look at those and just, think about them. They provide, I think, hopefully a really good framing for the actual tasks that you'll be completing each month. And then every month is divided into overall responsibilities and important deadlines and weekly responsibilities. And similar to the prior slide that we already went over together, your overall responsibilities are divided up into recruitment management, planning, and community development. And then we have our deadlines and our weekly responsibilities. So that is how the entire document is laid out. Those framing questions, the responsibilities, and then how those kind of square with the deadlines. Really take the time to review this document, read it, take some notes on it, make your own copy, and reach out with any questions that you have. It should provide you a much more detailed sense of what this role will look like on a weekly and daily basis, and the specific responsibilities you'll be working through each month. So I keep talking about all the different things that you'll do as NAFLT members. Now let's talk about how we're going to enable you to do that successfully, how we're going to work together to ensure that we're all set up for success in this process with the different leadership supports and professional development structures that we have in place for this team. So first, I'm going to talk through the staff support for NAFLT and the different things that you can expect to be in place for you throughout this fall period. Again, it's more focused on the recruitment lead side of things because that's where we're at this point. So first, we have our weekly office hours. Those are open with me and open with Patrick every week. We're actually starting them this week. They're an opportunity for you to hop on for any coaching that you need, any feedback you have, just general support. Also, if you want to just hop in and say hi, I always love it when students do that. It saves me from looking at myself in the Zoom window, so I always really appreciate that. But if our office hours times don't work for you, if you have a class or another obligation, please email us. You can always meet with us one-on-one. That's what we're here for. I'm always happy to put on time to connect with you. So if the office hours aren't good for you, don't just think, oh, well, that's my opportunity. It's absolutely not, you can always open invitation to meet with us at any point. Next, career support. This is a fellowship. I think the NAFLT role particularly will hopefully set you up with a lot of key management skills that will be really relevant to future jobs that you take on and whatever you hope to do in the future, even if it's not in any sort of education or nonprofit field. So we're really here to talk to you about that, provide rec letters for you, references. You're absolutely free to do that, as well as just having more open and individualized conversations about how we can ensure you're getting what you want to get out of this NAFLT role, and to make sure you're developing the skills that you want to develop that are aligned with your future goals. Next, we have challenging situation support. This is something I really want to highlight. It's a very broad category, but things may come up for your HAFs and your AFLT in their personal lives. There may be tumultuous things happening on their campus. All of those are going to impact their ability or lack of ability to show up for recruitment, and those are things that you should not have to be sitting with alone. I think especially with student-to-student relationships, sometimes students may be more likely to reach out to you with something that's going on with them, and we just want to ensure that you're not sitting with those alone, that you are always communicating with us, because we have a lot of specific policies and guidance that we can provide you in order to make sure those students are getting the support that they need, needing to take a step away if that's what they need, and also that you're not expected to manage that on your own. So the same way that we wouldn't expect you to manage an emergency or a serious challenge with your HSF on your own, please take that same approach with your HAFs. Even if you just want to talk through something with us, that's what we're here for. Then HAF one-on-one feedback and staff shadowing. So don't worry that we're just going to assign you to a campus and then, you'll never hear from us again, and we'll just expect things to move forward, particularly in those early weeks of working with your HAFs. Patrick and I will be doing a lot of quality checking and just supporting you on those early weeks of, recruitment plan feedback, HAF one-on-ones, things like that. So you feel like you're, continually getting onboarded. It's not just going to end at the end of training, and that you are feeling ready to meet with your campuses rather than being just, thrown into it. So we'll provide a lot of feedback and coaching, but not too much, don't worry. Then we'll have weekly NAFLT meetings. These are a really great opportunity for our small group to get together, talk about upcoming recruitment milestones, talk about challenges you're having with your HAFs, share best practices, things like that. And lastly, staff one-on-ones. So there will also be opportunities for NAFLT to connect with staff on a one-on-one basis. So we can, just talk more in depth than we could at our full group meetings about how things are going with you, what support we can provide you, and just check in. So in addition to those staff supports, there are also a number of key resources you'll use throughout your time as an NAFLT member. HAFs and AFLT will have an opportunity to practice with each of these resources throughout training, but we're going to give a more big picture overview first. As a manager of HAFs, it will be really important for you to understand how these resources are used by your HAFs and AFLT to successfully execute AF recruitment. So it's really important for you to get familiar with them so you can support your HAFs, and so they're utilizing all the tools they have at their disposal to succeed. So we have our recruitment management base, which will be living in Airtable. This will be a really key place for you to track your team's recruitment plans, provide constructive and positive feedback to them, and ensure they're moving forward in their recruitment goals. So this will be a big document for you to look at. Another big document for you to be aware of is our resource base and our recruitment updates. So those recruitment updates will be regular communications from Matriculate staff with our upcoming deadlines, resources, advice. Those will be coming at you on, multiple times a week, every week. And then these 4 remaining resources, so the social media base, the resource base, the central recruitment handbook, and the campus specific recruitment handbook, those are going to be things that your HAFs and AFLT are living in. So we really encourage you to get familiar with them, the resources, the strategies that are in there, so that way you can tailor your management accordingly. So if your HAF is saying, I don't really know how to manage Instagram. You don't have to pull strategies, out of the air on your own. You can take some time to screen share in that meeting, walk through the social media base, make sure they understand how to use it. Same for those recruitment handbooks. If they're feeling lost about how to come up with a quality recruitment plan, it's a great opportunity to refer back to those resources and make sure they know that they're not dealing with this alone. In addition, we'll also have opportunities to build leadership skills and share best practices across all of our HAFs during monthly HAF calls. We're going to start those in September, and we'll be connecting monthly, first on an AF recruitment and cohort building topic, and then on a leadership skill development topic. So the first part will be really more tailored to where we are in the AF recruitment process and troubleshooting challenges, sharing successes about where we're at in that process, making sure students understand, let's say AF interviews, for example. And then we'll also talk about leadership skills. So it'll be an opportunity to discuss and practice skills from that leadership skill guide, an opportunity for HAFs to continue working on those skills that are maybe growth areas for them, providing feedback to each other, things like that. So as an NAFLT, as a manager, it's also important for you to see, the other supports that your HAFs are having to succeed in their roles. Now, you'll meet weekly with your HAFs for a 1 hour long one-on-one meeting, and these meetings are a key space to troubleshoot any challenges your team is having with team management, AF recruitment, great space to plan for the weeks ahead and work on their skill building and their fellowship vision. Building a strong and trust-based relationship with your HAFs is also of huge importance here. It's really important to create a safe environment for them to share their challenges, their worries with you, their successes. I also think we can harken back to the HSF role here. So think about the principles and strategies you've used to build a relationship with your HSFs, to manage your HSFs, and think about how they might translate to your HAF relationships. And additionally, for anybody listening to this who has been a head advising fellow in the past, think about, what worked well when recruitment leads and matriculate staff were working with you, and think about what didn't work well. I think that will, really help you guide your own work. So now we're going to talk a bit more about NAFLT meetings. So we're going to meet weekly to discuss challenges with HAF management, upcoming AF application, recruitment milestones, build community with each other, get to know each other, also really fun and exciting. Kind of surface any confusion. If you have a question, it's very, very likely that you're not the only one with that question. And then it's also a really key time for us to look at how we're doing and progressing on a more macro scale. So across all of our campuses, what are common challenges? What might we need to send out an additional resource about? What schools are not meeting their recruitment targets? Why might that be? How can we support them in that area? Do we feel that we're living up to our values in our recruitment? And then also, I mentioned this before, but there will also be individual opportunities to meet with staff and our office hours to connect. Okay, we did it. We're in our last section. Continue bearing with me. We've got this. So now we're going to look at some examples of how these NAFLT responsibilities are put into practice. So even though the program design projects won't be happening until much later, I wanted to show you an example program design project created by Brian Lee, a returning NAFLT member. Hello, Brian. He worked on a really fantastic social media base. So I'm going to show you all that just to kind of get a sense of what your possible program design project could be. So Brian created this beautiful Airtable base that has a bunch of really wonderful social media resources that collected the resources and content that was created largely by the 2022 cohorts, and then organizes them in a bunch of really convenient and visually pleasing ways. So here we can see the type of posts organized by campus. Here we can see them organized by the type of content that they are. So let's say I'm working on an upcoming roles and responsibilities post, at UPenn. So I can take a look at, oh, look, a post that Emory made in the past. And I can either go to Canva, to this design, to create my own version of this post, and iterate off that template, or I can just use it as inspiration. So in addition to, all these wonderful examples of content, there are actually links to editable files. So if you want to, iterate on these posts for your own fellowship, you can do that here. So why does this work? What makes this project such a successful recruitment project? Brian successfully managed the HIFs and NAFLT to provide their social media content in order to make this project happen. He also created and executed this project. Oh, excuse me. Created and executed this project, in order to be successful. So he had a really clear project timeline, really clear project goals, really clear project outlines that allowed him to get it done in time and get it done with a great deal of quality. In addition, it really aligns with our goals and values. Through improving our program quality, our goal of improving future years of AF recruitment. And then it also really shows values-driven AF recruitment. So he uses this space to show what makes social media effective. He also shares a lot of best practices there that align with our values and mission. And he creates this, cross-campus hub, which will allow for more resource sharing across campuses. Now we're going to look at one more example of one of our former NAFLT members through the feedback that Dylan, one of our NAFLT, gave to the YALE team that he was working with when he gave them recruitment kits. So here is a copy of Dylan's feedback for his YALE team. I do want to preface this by saying that this form is not something that you'll be using this year. So please totally ignore the way that this looks, because that won't be something that we'll be carrying forward for this year. But the content here is something that we can carry forward that's really, really great. So one thing I really like is the way that Dylan provides a wonderful mix of constructive and positive feedback. Here, so YALE, in their plan at this time, they were heading into the advising fellow early application deadline. So they were shifting away from searching out new audiences and shifting towards conversion rates and relationship building. So he gives some specific examples of how they can, incorporate some best practices from the recruitment handbook, some specific strategies that they could consider using that they didn't have reflected in their current recruitment plan. But he also provides some really great positive feedback. I already talked about this a little bit when I was screen sharing the plan, but why does this work? So Dylan provides really clear, positive, and constructive feedback to his YALE team. He gives specific examples of what can be improved, what they could consider incorporating into the plan, and he builds a great relationship with them through this positive feedback and through encouraging their efforts and really validating their work as leaders and as owners of their own cohort. Then he also really shows values-driven AF recruitment. He highlights, the importance of person-driven recruitment, of quality, one-on-one interactions with applicants. And again, that mixture of positive and constructive feedback really aligns with our values and really aligns with our goals for the NAFLT role of, building confidence and leadership skills within your HIFs. Okay, congratulations, we've done it. We are now going to head into some next steps to see what's coming down the road for all of you in the NAFLT role. So after you complete this session, which is where we're at right now, I encourage you to look back at your NAFLT roadmap. I know it's the pre-work, but it's also in the post-work. So please look at that document in detail, reach out with any questions that you have. You're also going to review that recruitment specialties document that we went over in greater detail and take a look at the central recruitment handbook. Some of you might have used this before last year, but it's been significantly updated for this year's leadership class. So please read that over again. And then lastly, you're going to do your exit ticket for this session. And then our next session coming down the road is how to build a cohort recruitment planning. So that's when you'll get a much more detailed look at that recruitment manager on Airtable. And we'll talk a bit more about what recruitment plans look like and what Matriculate's current guidance is for what quality recruitment planning and execution is. And then we will talk a lot more about what it means to be a recruitment lead, build on what we've discussed in this session with our NAFLT practicum. So that will be a great opportunity for all of us to connect. I'm super excited and just, get a deeper sense of the role. I hope that this session was helpful for all of you, that you're walking away with a greater understanding of what the NAFLT role looks like on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. If you have any questions that you're sitting with that you're uncertain about, please reach out to me, send me an email, send me a Slack message, and we can talk. Otherwise, I'll see you for our next session, and I thank you for getting to the end of this video.